there, it's Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today I am going to be creating a card slightly different than what I'm used to. I am going to take two circles out of this set here and just use a little bit of post-it note tape, so just a low-tech tape, to kind of adhere them both so that they create a nice circle frame. Now, when I was placing them down on my card base here, and my card base is made out of 110 pound Nina Solar White, and this is a 5 by 5 inch card base. And I want to do some partial die cutting here, and I'm thinking about how I want the circle to kind of hang off the edge. Half of the circle will be showing. However, when I was thinking about it with the 5 by 5 card, it just felt too big. So I've come back here with a 4 by 4 inch card, and it feels much better. So I have put the circles down directly in the middle, and the trick to partial die cutting is I open up my card so it's lying flat, and then I'm just going to put my top cutting mat over the part of the card that I want to cut. So I want it to cut only to halfway. So if I do it this way, it will only cut to the edge of that top cutting plate, and the rest will stay intact perfectly. So you'll kind of get a good look at what it looks like here. And I'm going to take off my two circles that are together, and you can see it's just cut that half semicircle there. And I'm going to take out the smaller circle from inside here because I want the inside circle to be completely gone from my card. So I kind of just nestle it right back into place from where it was sitting before, and it kind of just sits in there nicely. And then I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine properly. So you can see I've got a big large circle in the middle there. And then just to finish off, I'm going to use my scissors and snip the top and the bottom so that my die cutting is complete. So now I have one panel which is 4 by 4, and it kind of has this overhanging half semicircle there. What I wanted to do was to create a nest. I have a friend of mine who has just purchased a new home, and this card is for her. And so I just went through all of my stash of dies. Now I will try and list as many as I can of these down below, but truly you should just go through your stash. I found twigs, branches, leaves, foliage, reeds, anything that I thought I could turn into a nest sort of. And even though they're not the right size here, I'm just going to cut pieces smaller and smaller until they fit nicely around the edge of that circle. So you can see I've had to cut them down much smaller and then add a little bit of liquid glue. The liquid glue that I'm using in this glue bottle is the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish, and the glue bottles are from AliExpress, which I'll link down below. And as you can see, I'm just adding little bits here and there and all over the place. Now, I just encourage you to go through your stash. As I said, find anything, and I've cut it out in a couple of different shades. I think there's 3 different shades of brown cardstock. And there's no real rhyme or reason to where I'm putting everything. I'm just layering it up. And at the moment, there is a white background, obviously, to that circle. But I did decide that it kind of looked a little bit too stark and that I wasn't going to get enough coverage with just my die cuts. So I took a little bit of this happens to be the Hero Arts Cuppa Joe, which is just a brown dye ink, but you should use whatever you have, and a finger dauber so that I could just add a little bit of brown and get rid of that really stark white behind my nest. And I think when I was die cutting, I wasn't sure quite how layered I would need to make this, and I probably ended up using a little bit less than what I thought I would. But yeah, it doesn't really matter. I just made sure that I had plenty there, and what I started to do was I started to put the odd little bits and pieces that were just coming a little bit off the edge or a little bit off center, a little bit into the middle, and a little bit to the outside, just so that it wasn't such a perfect circle, because obviously a nest is not sort of a perfect circle, and not that a nest looks anything like this in real life at all, but just in theory when I'm thinking about a nest. So yeah, all this little foliage, I'm starting to put a little bit here and there which goes outside and inside. Now, obviously, the way that I have cut this card, there is quite a bit of the inside of the card showing. So obviously, I'm not going to leave it like this. I didn't want you to be worried. I am going to add a second part to the card here. So I have cut another card base, another 4 by 4 inch card base, and I'm going to add that to the other side. So this will be kind of a trifold card in the end. And I guess it isn't super necessary, but this does create a nice place where you can write in the middle and your words won't be seen from the outside. So here is my second card base, and I'm just going to turn it around and I will adhere those two pieces together, but not quite yet because I'm not finished with a few of the things that I need to do. So what I'm doing is taking a pencil and I'm kind of holding the two cards together how they will be, and just drawing a really light circle in the inside. And then I have these four gorgeous birds here. Now this is just one stamp, they're all joined together, and I just want one bird to be in the middle of this nest. So I just need to do a little bit of covering it up with some post-it notes. So I have this in this is my mini MISTI, and I'm just going to do some heat embossing on my little bird so that it makes it really easy and quick for me to color it. So I've got my little anti-static powder bag there, which makes sure that no embossing powder will stick in the wrong places. Some VersaFine Onyx black ink, which is a nice pigment ink that will allow me to do some heat embossing, and then stamp this little birdie right in the center of my circle, my pencil circle that I drew earlier on. So I double stamp it to make sure it's nice and dark, and then I'm just going to add some clear embossing powder. As I said, the only real reason that I'm doing this is to ensure that I can do some really quick watercoloring. If you're doing any other medium like alcohol markers or anything like that, you would be absolutely fine. You don't need to do the heat embossing as long as you use the right inks and things. Then I'm going to erase my circle because I don't need people to see that part of it. And then I have chosen the 4 Distress Oxide inks: Tumbled Glass, Shaded Lilac, Blueprint Sketch, and Mermaid Lagoon. And I've just simply stamped a tiny wee corner of each of these onto an acrylic block because I hardly need any ink to color in this little bird. And I am just using a water brush pen and making sure that I have got a little bit of purple color on his tum. He's going to be a little blue bird. This is obviously not a realistic little bird. This is just a cute little bird for the center of my card, so it doesn't take me very long to color in this wee guy at all. So once I have him all done and dusted, he's looking pretty cute, and I just need to wait for him to dry, or you could use a heat gun and that would speed up that process. But what I do need to do is add a little bit more detail to the card because it's looking slightly plain even for my liking. So I have this cloud die here, and what I usually do, I do this often, I have a little bit of the Tumbled Glass Distress Oxide ink, just a really light blue ink, and I'm using a finger dauber, and I just have this a little piece of die cut cardstock, and I usually reuse this several times. It kind of sits on my craft desk. I've actually been doing this a lot recently, so I often reuse the same one and just roughly going over it. Now, honestly, when you kind of start this, you think, oh, the ink's not very even. But when you take it all off and look at the whole entire page, honestly, it looks perfectly fine for a sky background. So don't fret too much about whether you've got light or dark spots or heavier spots of ink when you are putting clouds down on your background. I do need to put some clouds down on the front piece of my nest portion of the card just so that it all matches up nicely, and that way when the card is put together it will be kind of nice and continuous. Then a little bit of liquid glue on the back piece of one of the cards, and I just pop them together so that that adheres my card into one solid panel now. As I said, it's just a nice strong liquid glue, and that's really important. I did die cut this little sun here just out of some sort of bright yellow cardstock, and I figured if I put it on the left hand side there it would be empty on the inside, so that's why I went for the right hand side, and just hold it down and then cut off any of the excess that is hanging over the edge. It's not meant to be a central feature, it's just a couple of wee things to add a little bit more interest to the card, I guess. So I guess completely optional. And then I have that cloud die as well, which I die cut out in some plain white cardstock, and I'm going to add those in as well. I'm adding a little bit of foam tape behind the clouds, again just to give it some dimension, but I need to make sure that I'm not putting any with the foam tape behind that flap there, because obviously it won't shut properly. So any that go behind the flap are just adhered down straight onto the card with liquid glue, but the ones on the front have got a little bit of foam tape behind them. Now, I do love my little bird in the middle, but to me he looks like he's floating a little too much for my liking. So I have cut out some of the branches that I added around the nest as well, and I'm going to add one through the middle so that he's actually standing on something and he's not just floating. I'm just going to stretch this branch right across the inside of the nest, and it will attach nicely at one side and then go right across and attach to the other side. So I quite like that that kind of stretches right across the middle of the central feature. And that kind of finishes off the outside part of the card. So I really like how this little cute guy looks. Now, you could leave the inside blank, but because I knew that I was welcoming somebody to their new house, I wanted to have a little something in the middle. I did have to cobble together some stamp sets. There's a couple of stamp sets here to make this work. Now, I did not film this process because I literally had to do a lot of cobbling together words and individual letters from different words and things. It was just a bit crazy. But anyway, I have cut out each individual word, and then I'm just using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink to kind of give a little edge to each of the pieces of paper that I have cut out. Now, the sentiment says, "Congrats on your new nest." So yeah, and even all the fonts of the sentiment are all different because I took them from all different sets, but it kind of looks like that's the way it's meant to be. So I really do like how it turned out in the end. And then my fingers were too big, so I resorted to using some tweezers to add the ink around the edges. And then it's just a matter of putting some liquid glue and adhering them down into the middle, and that is my card for today. I will put links down to as many things as I can find down in the description box below. And give me a thumbs up if you guys like this kind of card, and let me know what you think in the comment section, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you. See you later. Bye.